Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to the Lead Different podcast. We are premiering our episode with Tamara Skye today. How are you, Tamara?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
So great to see you.
Likewise.
This has been a busy day. I had a workshop this morning with a group of educators from one of our local schools, and then Tuesday I had a meeting with a bunch of principals from our local schools. So it's been a busy week, and I didn't know if I was going to make it, but I'm so glad you're here. You made it. We've got your smiling face on. Thank you
Yeah,
for all the promotion you've been doing, letting your network know about our interview today. I think it's great when our guests invite their networks to join us. So thank you for doing that.
of course, of course. I think it's an important conversation and it was fun to have, so I would love to share it.
What was fun is the topics we covered. I love that. I posted this week about the ripple effect. I think it was such a great topic you brought up. The fact that it's great. It's good to have great leaders, but it's even better when great leaders share and develop other great leaders. So that got a lot of response when we posted about it, and I'm so glad you talked about it during our interview.
Absolutely. I think it's important. If I'm looking for satisfaction in a job, for me, it's how am I helping others grow? That's kind of my meter of joy. So the ripple effect is real.
Yeah. Well, what's exciting for you right now, Tamara? Since we recorded the interview, what have you been up to?
Oh, wow. I have been answering unexpected doors.
Yeah, tell me about
Is
it.
that for a little bit of mystery? So I've had some opportunities present that I wasn't really looking for,
Mhm.
that I have decided I'm going to say yes to. One of which is actually maybe step away from center gravity a little bit and further my corporate career with a company that I can't quite reveal yet. But it's one that I have always admired. And again, I wasn't looking for this opportunity, but it has come to me. And so I'm saying yes, and I'm really excited about it.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well, we won't make you reveal any secrets, but we're gonna have to keep in touch.
Mhm.
You and I keep in touch anyway. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. What else have you been up to?
Oh, other than that, I think just like everybody else, getting ready for the holidays.
Yeah, how
And
how was your Thanksgiving?
it was good. It was very quiet. It was very quiet. It was just me and my godson and my son.
Yeah,
And we had a day of we actually put up the Christmas tree on Thanksgiving, which was a little early, but
yeah,
we did it and had a lot of fun doing that. And we had a day of movies and just connection time together.
excellent,
Talk
excellent.
about being thankful.
There's a lot to be thankful for. We had a similar Thanksgiving. It was just my wife and I and our 13-year-old daughter. We hadn't done that since she was two. When she was two, we needed a vacation from our families because when you have a new baby, everybody's visiting all the
Mhm.
time. And we decided to do Thanksgiving by ourselves. We went to Key West. A friend of mine had a place there and allowed us to stay there. And it was Thanksgiving in Key West. So when she was between 1 and 2 years old. And then this year is our second time doing that. So in 13 years of her life, we've done that twice. And like you, we watched movies. We played Monopoly, and
Uh-huh.
our daughter won for the first time, which she's definitely not going to let us forget that because I usually am the tyrant at Monopoly. And
Uh-oh.
and
She's learning, watching and
oh,
learning.
oh
Rip
yeah,
it.
she bought up all the properties and she started building, and it was you get to the point where, like, if I land on you, I'm bankrupt, so I give up. I cannot,
Yeah,
I couldn't. She was smart. She bought up all the property, so I couldn't build, and so it was she played it perfectly.
brilliant. Well, for me, I figure anytime my son and my godson, who are both in their early 30s, are willing to spend time with this old lady, I'm gonna take it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun because as you know, I have an older daughter that's in her 30s, and we have different relationships with our kids at different ages,
Mhm.
right? She's a mom, she's got two kids and a husband to deal with, and we don't get as much time together as I get with my 13-year-old, and that's going away soon because she's going to be in
Yeah,
high school. She's going to be getting busy with activities and everything else. So, I think I read a statistic says we spend 80% of the time we'll spend with our kids before they're 12.
yeah,
And then after that, it's high school activities, then they drive, then they're driving themselves. We're no longer spending time with them, driving them to activities or to school. And then
right.
they graduate and they go to college. And so we're not seeing them except for holidays. And then After that, they get married, and then maybe you're alternating holidays with the in-laws. So the time,
Yeah, life happens.
yeah, it really is precious. Well, Tamara, is there anything you want to make sure we talk about before we go to the interview? I know we've got people that you've invited to come and listen. I saw a couple of great names on the RSVP list. I hope they chime in when we start playing the interview. But you and I will be in the background, just so everybody knows the way we do the premieres here at Lead Different is Tamara and I are going to sneak into the background. Sunil's going to play the interview from the beginning. You guys will be listening to Tamara and I have a conversation. But if you have any questions, any thoughts, anything you want to throw it in the comments, whether you're on YouTube, on Facebook, or on LinkedIn, throw it in the comments. We'll respond to you. And if not, Tamara and I are going to make sure we have some comments for you while the interview is playing. So without any further ado, here is my conversation with the wonderful and fabulous Tamara Skye. Have a great day, everyone. Make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you hit like. Make sure you comment. And make sure you share the episode with your friends, because there's a lot of wisdom that Tamara shared in this interview. So here we go, Sunil. Let's put it on.
Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead Different, because great leaders change the world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lead Different podcast. I'm excited to introduce you to our guest today, Tamara Skye. Tamara Skye is the founder and CEO of Center Gravity. She is a strategic advisor, a leadership developer, and a performance coach. She helps leaders who are chartered with leading transformations achieve stronger outcomes and success by sharpening the forward vision, creating realistic strategies, then understanding the limiting beliefs that might be impeding change and challenging them to continually grow their own skills. She believes that leadership at its core is about consistently and authentically connecting with others to help them achieve success. So let me introduce you guys to my good friend and your future coach, Tamara Skye. How are you, Tamara?
I'm good, Dan. Thanks so much for having me today.
Thank you for being here. I'm excited to talk to you. It's been a while since we last spoke. We got a chance to see each other at the YCon earlier this year. So that was a lot of fun to get to see you in person. It's not often when we, in this virtual world that we live in, where we meet a lot of people throughout the world. I have clients all over the world, and I got to meet you a few years back in person in Arizona at the International Coaching Federation conference that Gary and I presented at. So that was a couple of years ago. Then,
2022.
2022. Can you believe it? It's already been 2 years. Then you went through the process of becoming a Y certified coach, working internally at your former company. And now you are the founder and CEO of Center Gravity Coaching. So you've been on your own now for a little over 6 months. How has that been going?
Oh, it's a whole different world. It's definitely different than showing up for a lot of meetings every day. Like having to, own my own calendar in a different way, fill my own calendar in a different way. Instead of having everybody demanding my attention, I'm out there knocking on doors saying, "Hey, give me some attention." So it's been a very different world to start to navigate.
Well, you've got to, I love that part, the part of the introduction where we talked about the fact that first of all, you're a strategic advisor. Secondly, you're a leadership developer. And third, you're a performance coach. A lot of people might say, okay, what's the difference between a strategic advisor, a leadership developer, and a performance coach? Talk us through those three different roles that you play as an optimizer of human performance.
Yeah, it's a great question. So as a strategic advisor, I'm able to take the years of experience that I have, really leading large-scale transformation in corporate America. All of the lessons that I've learned as an advisor, I'm able to go in and help people, in essence, navigate some areas faster so that they don't have to make the same mistakes. So I'm able to go in and really understand what it is they're trying to achieve, and then give them insights into what other companies have done. So again, they can, I guess, accelerate is the best word to use, their progress and get to the outcomes even faster. So that's a level of expertise that I can share because it's advisory.
Right.
As a leadership developer, that's really about growing others. One of the things that I have loved in my career is all of the opportunities that I had to work with people who were rising leaders who maybe didn't even know they had leadership skills, and being able to bring them on that journey and walk with them and help them become some really amazing, powerful leaders today that are out there serving others. So that's a really important part to me, because I think if there's one thing this world can always use more of, it's great leaders. So huge part for me. And then the performance coaching is something that I kind of fell into along my journey, because I was pulled into underperforming organizations to help them become high performing. And the performance coach aspect is where I really learned how to understand the innate strengths that each person brings into the organization and their own skills, and then help them amplify that and sort out how that really fits into the broader vision. It increases engagement. It increases their desire to learn and grow more. And overall, it increases the outcomes an organization is able to achieve. So the performance coaching is really centered around helping people go from, kind of that everyday, yeah, I'm here, to peak performance, where the company and the person are both getting the absolute best that they have to offer.
So of the three, Tamara, which one do you just if you were going to do one? I don't, this is a hard question, but I know you're probably really good at all three. But if you were going to do only one, which one do you absolutely say, you know what, I would only do that if I could get 10 ideal clients for that specific work? I'd do it in a heartbeat.
That's like asking your favorite child, Dan. That's unfair. I think though, if I were only really going to do one right now in where I am, it would be leadership development, because I think that's the one that has the largest ripple effect. When you really take the time to grow new leaders and help leaders understand what it means to be a leader who's coming at things with authenticity, who's putting people first, who's really looking at what so many people call the soft skills, but what I say are the hard skills, because they're the people skills, and they're learning how to navigate those. There's just such an astounding ripple effect that happens, because they go into an organization as a better leader, and then they begin grooming better leaders, right? They begin developing better leaders. And so those folks, advance, they move up, and they go to their next organization that now they're running, and they're that better kind of leader. And so you see just this repeatable effect that happens from really great leadership development.
Great leaders make great leaders, right? There's that, and we talk about it. It's easy to see in sports, Tamara. You see a great head coach that has a bunch of great assistants, and then a few years later, those guys are all head coaches, right? And then their assistants are becoming head coaches. So I truly, I can see where that ripple effect is so positive. What's and obviously you're on the Lead Different podcast. So what do you see? What is it? We believe that if you lead the way everyone else does, you're going to get the results everyone else gets. Mm-hmm. If I'm working with Tamara, what am I going to get that's different? How is the leadership training and development that I get with Center of Gravity going to be different than what everybody else is doing?
So I really have a strong belief that an average leader is never going to create a high-performing organization. And so I want to get people to be high-performing leaders so that they can have high-performing organizations. And for me, that means creating a very different level of trust and transparency with everybody in your team, with your direct reports, with their direct reports. Like, there has to be a very different level of truth, of authenticity, of consistency that comes about in order to have those. So, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, people call them the soft skills, but I think they're the hardest skills of all to master, because it's psychology based. It's learning to understand what motivates each individual at their core. It's one of the reasons why I really gravitated to the Y.OS, because when you understand what each person has at their core, you can begin to tap into that in a way that's very authentic for them and bring them into the work that you need to achieve. So I think that's the biggest differentiator.
Hey, thanks for bringing that up. I love that you look at the unique individual, right? And so you were attracted to the Y.OS assessment. We call it a discovery, but learning what drives people is so important. And I always say it all starts with self-awareness. I think good leaders want to be self-aware. They want to know their strengths. One of the first leadership books I ever read was talked about the 4 steps of Jesuit leadership, and the first step was self-awareness, understanding your strengths, understanding your challenges. And I think one of the things we forget oftentimes when they're doing the Y.OS is, yes, we're looking at strengths. And by the way, those of you that are listening, all you coaches that are listening, I know you're out there, especially our fellow Y coaches. Tamara's Y is better way. Her how is challenge, and her what is trust. So one of the reasons I asked her the question, how is what we're going to do with Tamara going to be different? Not only is it going to be different, it's going to be better. And she has a what of trust. So she has a high drive to make sure that what she delivers is something you can count on. So what a great combination that you have of challenging the status quo, finding a better way, but also making sure that it's something that's dependable and people can count on. How have you, as you've done this now as an internal coach and now doing it as an external coach and consultant, what are the biggest insights that you're getting when you do the Y.OS with leaders?
Oh, wow. The how is real. Like the why is important, but the how, that's the thing that can really either launch people or get people really stuck. So if I'm working with somebody who has a how of make sense and they can't get beyond that, they just keep, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Like part of my job then is to help them say, okay, it's not making sense to you. And what is the other value that might be here? Like what happens if you can't make sense of it? How do you get unstuck from trying to make sense? So being able to really bring that in and move sometimes people past that, if it's become a deficit for them, into the so what, like for me, of trust. So maybe the so what for them is trust, or maybe the so what for them is challenge, but getting them to be able to, I guess, lean into using their how for good and not letting it derail them from getting to the end game of what.
I love that you said that, Tamara. We were, Nikki and I, our COO at Why Not Leadership, were talking yesterday, and she was talking about the importance of the how, because she's make sense, mastery, contribute. And she said, and I don't know if you've seen this, Tamara, but the how really does show up. I'm contribute, challenge, makes sense. And if people meet me, they think challenge because I'm loud, I'm obnoxious, I'm different, I'm out of the box. I mean, my podcast is called Lead Different. My company is Why Not Leadership. Everything about me screams challenge, but my why is actually contribute. In everything I do, I want to make a difference. But I think because it's our how, it's how we do everything. It's what people see. Would you agree with that? Do people see your challenge before they see your better way or your trust?
Absolutely. When I first discovered my Y.OS, challenge didn't really surprise me, because I stepped back and I started thinking about all of the times in meetings where I had said, do you mind if I just go ahead and play devil's advocate for a minute? And used words like that because I wanted to challenge the groupthink that was going on. Or I wanted to make sure we had thought about what else could it mean? What else could it mean, in fact, is my absolute favorite coaching question. When people get stuck in their story, well, they did this and it means this. Well, what else could it mean? And I get people to give me three other things that something could mean, because it makes them think outside the box and get out of their story. So when I started thinking about this whole challenge thing, I'm like, that just makes so much sense. Being told when I was, I don't know, in the 7th grade that I was being difficult because I challenged a teacher. It's very inherent, and it's been there for a long time.
So you identified with the challenge very quickly. And I'm sure the better way was there, because I think challenge and better way tend to vibe well. They're both very creative wise. We're both looking to do
Definitely.
things differently. I always like to joke that challenge people will do things differently just to see what happens. Better way people will do it differently to see if it's better. And if it's
To see
better,
if
then
it's better.
yeah. And which is great, because for you, you become your own filter, right? You have the challenge and you have the better way,
Yeah.
both embedded into what you do. Oh, great. I'm glad you brought that up. Your middle school, or being young. When do you think, when can you remember that challenge or that better way or that trust? When in your young adult life or as a teenager, when do you remember the first time you said to yourself, why do we have to do it that way? Or is there's got to be a better way to do that? Can you think back to a time when you really started honing that gift of looking at things differently?
This so many times, Dan, so many times. Um, so I was adopted, and I can remember stories that my mom would tell of when I was like 3 and 4, of, her saying, tie your shoes this way. And I would say, no, mommy, I want to do it this way, because for me, it was a better way. When I was in high school, learning algebra, I didn't do it the way that the teacher taught us. I completely got to the same answers in what was a better way for me. And he didn't understand it because it wasn't the formula, but it actually worked. And I remember having the challenge conversation of, do you really believe there's only one way to get to this answer? That one person discovered the absolute one way to get to this answer? Or is there a possibility that my way works too? And then I would show it to him, and he's like, I don't understand how you did that. Like, that sounds like a you problem. So
right, because you're getting to the answer, right? It's interesting you bring that up, because I was in the military,
Mhm.
and you would think with the how of challenge in the military, I would have gotten in a lot of trouble. But people don't what people don't realize is that the military is about accomplishing the mission.
Right.
And doesn't matter how you accomplish the mission, because as Mike Tyson famously said, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the nose, right? Once you
Right.
get punched, once the battle starts, you've got to just
You
accomplish
got to
the mission.
flex.
Yeah, and you got to flex, and those that are capable of flexing in chaos are gonna thrive. And challenge
Absolutely.
people tend to do well in those environments, right? What about in your adult life, as you were in a Fortune 50
Mhm.
company, where there's a lot of rules and regulations, a lot of processes and systems that you have to follow? How did Tamara live in that environment with the how of challenge? That, what I know, and you can agree or disagree with me because you're a fellow coach, people with the why of challenge don't like to be put in a box. People that
Mhm.
don't like to be told exactly how to do things. And you mentioned even learning algebra, you wanted to do it your own way.
Yeah.
How were you able, I mentioned how I did it in the military. How did you live your how of challenge in a corporate environment?
Yeah, I think this might be where the birth of the coach was born, quite honestly, Dan, because I had to learn very quickly how to ask very smart questions, so that I was challenging in a way that was thought provoking, not aggressively. So by asking, questions, and sometimes putting that caveat of, I'm new to this organization, so if you could help me out, I just need to understand. Or saying, it's this area is something I haven't explored as deeply. Can you help me understand this? And challenging in that way. So it was always giving the person who I was challenging, I guess in some ways, still the authority that they had in their position, because usually it was somebody who was much higher ranked than I was. So giving them still that respect and that authority, and doing it in a seek to understand and seek to learn way, as opposed to just coming at somebody, challenging them in a very abrupt, assertive way. Not to say I haven't done that, because sometimes, as I moved up the ladder, there were times where that had to happen. Um, Not my favorite times. I would rather challenge collaboratively than anything else.
Sounds like you learned the valuable skill of, a mentor once taught me, you can say anything to anyone as long as you say it nicely, right?
Yeah,
You can challenge anything as long as you challenge in a way that allows people to keep their dignity and
exactly.
their honor. Because if you challenge them to the point where they have to defend themselves, then you put them in a different situation.
You
So that's
do.
great insight, Tamara. And let's have some fun with this. Tell us of a time when you didn't do it the right way, and how did it turn out? And if you can remember a time maybe where you said to yourself, I could have handled that differently. And how did you fix it? Because I think a lot of us who have challenge in our top three,
Mhm.
we will get ourselves in trouble at one time or another. So if there's a leader out there who maybe just did it today and they're listening to the
Yeah.
podcast, can you think of a time where maybe you didn't do it exactly the right way, but how did you overcome it?
Yeah, so there was a time with my boss actually, and he and I worked very, very closely together. So we had a great rapport and just a great connection overall. Um, and I was in a position where I had a lot of inside information that other people in the room didn't necessarily have yet. And he said something, and I pretty boldly challenged him in that moment. Um, I don't know, maybe I was tired. I don't know what it was. I just was too comfortable, but I challenged him in a very bold way. And I saw the look on his face as soon as I did it. And I was like, oh, whoops. I think I just did not do that well. And I had to call it what it was. Immediately after the meeting, I talked to him. I said, I'm really sorry. I know that didn't come out the right way. I didn't approach it the way I should have. And he at that time said, hey, I never have a problem with you challenging me, but in something like this, please always do it behind a closed door with just us. And it
Right.
was really fair. And I was still young in my career. And so it was a really important lesson for me to learn that even somebody in the position he was in as a CIO, he didn't have a problem with me challenging him. He had a problem with me challenging him in front of other people.
Right. Those career limiting moves, as we like to call them, right?
It could
So
be. It could be fatal flaw.
yeah. And I
Don't
think
want to
it's
have a fatal
important.
flaw.
And it's great that your boss was able to take it and turning it into a learning experience for you, which you obviously have taken and done well with it. Tell me about one of the things we talked about in the introduction is the impact of limiting beliefs.
Mhm.
That is something I think every coach deals with. Every person who's seeking coaching comes to the table with some limiting beliefs, and even us as coaches have limiting beliefs. Tell me what do you think the impact is that it has on people in their life and in their careers?
Yeah. So the impact of limiting beliefs is massive, actually. I hear people say all of the time, I don't have time, or I couldn't possibly. Uh, I hate failure. There's all of these things that we hold. And every single time we're saying something like that, we're telling our brains it's okay to not even try. A lot of people will talk about affirmations and things like that because of how they affect the brain, which we could actually get into a little bit if you want to. But when people are holding these limiting beliefs, it's telling your brain no need to exert the effort. Just we're good because we already know it's not going to work. We already know we don't have time to do it. So why even try to take it on? We already know that, we tried that once before and we failed. So we're not good at that. So when I talk to people about limiting beliefs, I think without fail, what I find is limiting beliefs are something that were gifted to us somewhere along our journey. Oftentimes when we were back in preschool or elementary school, there are things that a teacher said or that a parent said. We never have enough money. It's a big limiting belief. And when we look at these things, they're things that at the time served a purpose, but we keep carrying them. It's like a piece of baggage that we hold onto or a security blanket that we hold onto instead of saying, okay, if that served my 8-year-old self or my 12-year-old self or my 15-year-old self, is it really serving me now as an adult? And when we actually start to unpeel that, we find that it's not. And so then we have this opportunity to get rid of the limiting belief and replace it with an empowering belief that's actually one of our choice. So, I once had a teacher who said I wasn't good at math.
Mm.
I held that for a lot of years. I'm not good at math. And then even when I got into high school and I had that whole algebra fiasco, I still felt like I wasn't good at math because I didn't do it the way the teacher wanted me to do it. It wasn't until I actually got into my M.B.A. program. And by the way, if I thought I were better at math, I would be a doctor today because that's what I wanted to be. And the only reason I didn't go in and pursue that was because I believed I wasn't good at math. Huge impact as far as that goes. When I got into my M.B.A. program, it was actually my son, who was also going through a master's program at the time, who said, Mom, math is easy. You do this all the time. You just don't even realize it. And he sat me down and he tutored me through what I needed to do for statistics and all these other things. And all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, I can totally do this. I do this. I just wasn't even acknowledging that I was doing this. And I created a new empowering belief and completely got out of my own way.
Yeah.
And I spent time after time with people.
And I think it's not so much, especially when we look at your YOS makeup, Tamara, it's not that you were not good at math. You were different at math.
I was
you did
different.
it differently, right? And that's so important to understand. I'm the same way. I'm really good at math. I don't like doing math. There's a difference, right? There's stuff that we're good at. Just because you're good at it doesn't mean you should do it. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. I would never do my own taxes. I know that I don't have the time, the attention span to sit there and look at everything in minute detail. That's what people who are born with CPA like brains are.
And I do my own every year.
Yeah. There you go. So I think it's understanding that we all have talents and gifts. And I like what you talked about. Tell me, you mentioned affirmations. Tell me about how do you go from a limiting belief? How do you use affirmations to get away from a limiting belief so that it's now an expanding belief, or even turn it into a strength like you've been able to do?
Yeah. So one of the things I really coach people to do is to take that limiting belief and write a new story. So, write the story that puts it in a positive light. So a limiting belief might be, at my age, I'm too old to leave my company and go get a new job. People really wouldn't want to hire me because I only have 5 years left to work before I retire. Right? That's a very limiting belief that shuts you down. So having somebody instead take, a 3x5 card, just like, let me find one here that doesn't have stuff all over it. Take a 3x5 card, like this, and just write on it instead. People would love to hire me for the skills and experience I bring. I have mastered relationships and negotiation and collaboration. The experience I bring is high value and would help others grow in their journeys. So just taking it and making it something different that's positive. And then I have people actually read that out loud, like 5, 7, 10 times a day. And I always want them to do it out loud, because if you just read it in your head, that's great. But when you're actually saying it out loud and you're putting some physicality to it, it begins to literally change the neural paths in our brains. So it moves from the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, and it starts to just really embed in there and becomes an actual belief. Like there's actual empirical data out there that shows that when you're doing affirmations and you have the physicality involved in it, that it becomes just uber empowering. So I love using that.
Sounds like a great exercise. I might steal that, Tamara. I like it a lot. Let me ask you this, because as we're talking, I'm seeing so many different ways we can go with this. I know we have a limited amount of time, but you shared an acronym with me for the word failure. And can you share it with the audience? I want to make sure people hear this, because talk about taking a limiting belief and turning it completely around. Tell us what the letters in the word failure mean, and how do you use this?
So I think one of the biggest limiting beliefs out there is a fear of failure. I'm afraid I will fail. And if I fail, I won't be accepted. Or if I fail, people will look at me differently. If I fail, whatever it is.
Excellent.
So, failure, I know there are some people who say to fail is the first attempt in learning. Well, I like that, but I didn't love that. So in the last organization that I was running, we were leading large scale transformation, and failure was a real option. And it was something that a lot of people in my organization were really struggling with. And so one day it just came out of me. I said, listen, guys, failure is nothing more than a future advancement in learning under recurrent experimentation. A future advancement in learning under recurrent experimentation. Because what we really wanted people to do was experiment more. We wanted them to take those small bite experiments, to try things, and then to step back and do a little bit of a retrospective and say, what did I just learn? Did the experiment work? Did the experiment not work? If it worked, how do we advance it? If it didn't work, why not, right? Why did it not work? And what did we learn from it? And what's the next experiment we need to run in order to get to where we need to get to? So that became my thing for failure, future advancement in learning under recurrent experimentation.
So how did so let's talk about that. So future advancement in learning, a lot of companies talk about giving people the freedom to fail. It sounds like that's what you did with the teams, that you were implementing large scale change that where failure it's interesting you bring that up, because these are this is Fortune 50 company. Probably millions and probably billions of dollars at stake between success and failure. But you gave people the freedom to fail. A lot of companies call it failing forward, learn from the failure, right? But then there's the other side of it. And when we learn about the Apollo mission, for example, where failure was not an option, because if you failed, people were going to die. How do you give people enough rein to fail forward, but yet not fail the mission? And that's probably a really nuanced distinction that you have there.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think every failure is a failure forward, but you can have catastrophic failures, and we don't want that. So it's about failing fast. And so one of the guidelines that we set was, we will run experiments, but every experiment needs to be time boxed, right? This is like going really long-tailed experiments where the failure gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because you have so much time behind it. So let's fail fast. Like, what are we going to experiment with? How long are we going to experiment? And then we cut it, right? If it's a 3-week experiment, if it's a 3-month experiment, you're limiting the catastrophic effect of your failure when you do that. So if we take that cutoff and we say, okay, pause, what have we learned? Are we doing well? Are we trending towards, really negative failure? If we're trending towards negative failure, how do we need to adjust in order to try something different? Like, let's shift the game. So every time we were looking at strategy, every time we were looking at any of these, I would always remind my team that we're not chiseling this in stone. We're writing it in sand, which means it's very changeable. And I think what happens too often in corporate America is that goals, intentions, all of this stuff, it's put into a project plan or a product plan, and it becomes chiseled. And so everybody's held accountable to that. And people don't have the opportunity to say, hold up, this isn't actually working.
Right.
What do we need to do? How do we need to flex? Where do we need to shift a little bit? Because sometimes it's a 1 degree shift, right? I mean, if you think about navigation, if I start off in LA and I'm trying to get to New York City, right? I have my navigation path. If I veer just 1%, I'm not going to wind up anywhere near New York as I'm going through that trajectory. Sometimes we just need that 1% shift in order to get us where we actually need to go.
Fabulous. That I really like that example, and I've seen that used a lot. But I like the way that you brought it to just the fact that, hey, that's how we operate in an environment where we're allowing failure to happen. I like the time block too. I think a lot of people get stuck in, there's nothing worse than running enthusiastically in the wrong direction, right?
For a really long time.
For a really long time,
yeah.
right?
Then you're just exhausted.
Yeah, I like that. You put a time limit on it and say, okay, so if it fails, we're only going to fail for 3 months, or if it fails, it's only going to fail for a week. We're going to come back and evaluate.
Right, because that means it's a manageable failure, right? It's not necessarily something that's going out to market that's a failure, but it's a manageable failure where we can say, okay, so what else? What next? What did we miss? Yeah.
Tamara, let me ask you this question because this is important, and I want to be helpful to people who are listening, who are looking at Tamara and say, hey, I like what she's saying. Who do you love to work with? Who's if I was going to paint your ideal client, and maybe it's somebody you're already working with, but without giving us their name, who's a client when they come to you that you say, oh, I know I can help them. I can't wait to get to work with them. What's an ideal client look for you for Center Gravity LLC?
Yeah, so I love working with people who are in transformation or leading change, because I do believe that change is essential. Too often companies become very stuck in the status quo, and they don't want to change. They don't want the disruption that's involved in change. So I love working with leaders who are looking to shake things up a little bit, because that's how we grow and move forward and make better products for people that we're out there serving. The second thing that I look for is somebody who says, what can I do? Because again, too often I talk to leaders who they want to lead change, they want transformation, but it's all about those people. They need to change how they work. They need to do things differently. I want people who are willing to say, how can I serve differently? How can I lead differently? Because it starts with the leadership.
That people are going to say, Dan, you told her to say that, because the next question I was going to ask you, and thank you for that, sharing that answer, because that's really important. I wanted to know that. Let me ask you the next question is, what does it mean to you to lead different? What does it mean to you to help somebody lead different?
Yeah. For me, it's really about situational leadership. I don't think that there's not one flavor of leadership, and it's not a one size fits all. I've had people that reported to me who needed somebody who was really hands-on. They needed a lot of words of encouragement or words of affirmation. I've had other people who could care less about that. They wanted me to just give them a vision, tell them where they needed to get to, and then let them fly. I've had people who others said were problem people, and that they were brought to me to manage out of a company. And when I started talking to them and looking at their strengths, I was like, this person has a lot to contribute. So then I had to understand what motivated them. Like, why did they show up to work every day? What mattered to them? And when I gave them opportunities to lean into that, they became high performing people. So that's what leading different is to me. It's about understanding, again, the intrinsic motivations of each person, the skills that they bring, and how those skills can really contribute to the greater good.
That's really good. I really like I think we've all been in those situations. I think as leaders, we've all had those people that we say, you know what, I can't work with this person. I'm going to give them to Tamara and see what she can do with them. And like you said, you were tasked with the unenviable task of managing them out. And through doing some deep work and understanding them, you were able to actually find a gift that they had in a way for them to not have to leave, but actually contribute in a different way.
I will never forget the moment with this particular person that I have in mind, where we went out to dinner and my boss was there. And after, my boss came to me and he said, wait a second, I thought that was the person you were supposed to be managing out. And I said, I know, right? And he's like, they're fantastic. And I said, exactly. It was just untapped. So, it's moments like that I think are really powerful. Now, the hard part of that is, as a leader, that means you have to be really actively engaged, and not actively engaged in the weeds of their work, actively engaged in the human that they are. And so again, I think that's a lead different moment for me, Dan, because I've never been a leader who is all up in people's work, telling them what to do day to day, checking to make sure they did it. I paid them really good money to do their jobs, and I trusted them to do their jobs. And if they didn't, we had that conversation. But where I was actively engaged was in who they were. I wanted to know if they had a parent who was just diagnosed with cancer, or if their kid was in trouble at school, and not to get up in their personal business, but because those are things that no matter how much we try to not bring them to work, we do bring them to work. So understanding who they were as a complete person meant that I could lead them as a complete person, not just as the employee who needed to deliver X, Y, and Z.
That makes perfect sense. One of the things that I've learned as I've worked with teams throughout the years and having done this work for about 5 years, I find that the YOS is kind of the fast forward button to getting to those motivations and beliefs and understanding. But you take that next step that leaders, I think if you're a leader and you're listening, you have to get to know your people and understand that what you're seeing is only a small percentage of their life, right? And so,
Yeah.
like you said, their kid could be in trouble, their mom could have cancer. I had someone I was working with recently who had their mother-in-law, and their father-in-law. One got cancer and two died within 3
Wow.
months. Can you
That's
imagine
hard.
what that person's work performance was like during that period of their life? And oh, by the
Right.
way, they were also getting married a month after all this happened.
Oh my
So
goodness.
talk about a lot of life-changing things happening. But if you don't take the time to talk and have conversations with people,
Right.
if you haven't built the trust for them to be able to share that with you, all
Right.
you're noticing is declining performance.
Well, and I can tell you from experience, when you actually have those conversations as well, then you do develop a very different level of trust. So if you have to have a difficult conversation, it's so much more well received because they know that you see them as a whole person. And I've had leaders say, I don't possibly have time to do all that. And my response to that is if you get out of the weeds of the other stuff, you will.
Right.
It's all about what you prioritize, right?
Oh, Tamara, I love it. You took the words right out of my mouth. If you prioritize connecting with people, then you can connect with people. If you prioritize something else, then that's what's going to get
Yeah.
done. Tamara, what's your biggest why not moments? And since we're talking about why not leadership and leading different, what's a time in your life when you said why not to something and you're so glad you did it?
I know you asked this question of everybody, so I've been thinking about this, and it's funny. My first instinct was to give you something businessy, and I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna go against that first instinct, and instead, I will say my biggest why not moment was in 2011 when my parents were 87 at the time, living in California, and I wanted to move them to Arizona, and we looked at a ton of different, assisted living, retirement places, and they were just like all of them. They didn't like them. And so finally I said, well, what if I buy a different house and you just live with me? And I got an immediate thumbs up. And then I thought, what am I doing? I worked 60 hours a week. I was getting ready to start pursuing my M.B.A., which was going to be another 35 hours a week. So there's 95 hours a week gone. And I was going to take on two people who were 87 years old and who needed care. So it would have been really easy to say, I can't. And instead I said, why not? I won't lie and say it was easy, but I will 100% say that I have zero regrets and it was the best why not I ever did.
Wow. Are your parents still around, Tamara?
They are not. Nope. They both passed away 5.5 years later at the age of 93.
That is so wonderful. I bet you created some amazing memories. And
Yep.
and what a different way to do it, because at the end of the day, you may have had to hire a caretaker, but you were going to do that anyway. They were going to have to pay, if you were going to assisted living, you were going to probably pay
Yep.
a lot more.
A lot more.
And you got to spend some time with them. And wow, I'm getting chills thinking
Yeah.
about what I know that was a sacrifice for you, but it's also such a different way to look at it, because so many of us would have had that limiting belief. I don't have time. If I'm spending 95 hours, 95 of my waking hours already on getting my M.B.A. and working, do I have time to care for these 87-year-old people who, by the way, took care of me when I was
Exactly.
young and helpless and needed to be changed also, right? That's
Exactly.
fantastic. Congratulations. That is an amazing story. And I can't think of a better story to leave on than that. What do you say we end the show on that note?
Why not?
Thank you so much, Tamara, for being on the show. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on how to lead different, sharing what you do different at Center Gravity, how we can work with people at an even deeper level. I think this has been a fantastic conversation, and I'm excited that you're in the world, that you're able to be out there helping people lead through change. And I look forward to hearing more success stories and having you back on again to tell us more about it.
Thanks, Dan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Don't forget to like the podcast. Don't forget to give us a follow. And if there's something that you like, don't forget to comment and share it with your friends. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you next week on the Lead Different podcast.
Bye.
This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different because great leaders change the world.